minutes of...
Good evening, everybody. I'd like to call our meeting to order. City Clerk, roll call.
Commissioner Hutchinson.
Here.
Commissioner Willis. Commissioner Williams. Vice Mayor
Here.
Beasley.
Here.
Mayor Mallon.
Here. All right, public comments on items not on the agenda. I've got one card here, Elaine Chuntaruk.
Elaine Chuntaruk, 770 South Atlantic Ave. I represent Open Court Cocoa Beach LLC. I submitted a proposal to manage the Racket Club of Cocoa Beach. That proposal's in front of you guys. I think on August 3rd, there might be an agenda item to close out the management contract. The Leisure Board has met last week. That proposal's in front of you. I'd love for your consideration. If you have any questions, I'm available.
I read through your proposal. It's very well done. It gives a little extra boost to the city revenue. It sounds like a good compromise. And I'd like to hear from somebody from the Leisure Services Board to tell us why this one wasn't chosen. Tim? Tim, you want to speak to it?
No.
I think the commission.
If you'd like to speak now, it can be brought to the commission as an agenda item, and we'll speak then.
All right, I believe the commission should give this proposal full consideration when we come to our final deliberation.
Elaine, I talked to you before, and you'd be willing to do the guaranteed $1,000 a month or 10%, whatever's greater.
So I'll guarantee the rent up front. I'll pay $12,000 in an escrow account to the city, and then I'll guarantee a $1,000 minimum or 10%, whichever is higher of the gross profits.
Okay. Which is,
So a guaranteed $13,000 a year for the city.
and are these numbers correct now, the 9,000 numbers?
I don't have that, so I can't validate it, but I'll be glad to prior to the agenda being placed on a future agenda, or the item being placed on a future agenda.
We have the Leisure Service Board recommendation, either the same or prior to this?
Yes, sir.
It
It'll
sounds like
be
this
part-
is next Thursday?
It is not. It's
Okay.
actually, we need to have minutes from that Leisure
Got it.
Board Service meeting as part of the packet as
Right.
their recommendation. So the Leisure Board will meet again and adopt those minutes, and then it'll be presented to you as a Leisure Board recommendations with their backups, and I'll validate those numbers.
And
then,
all in time to hit the contract start date in November?
Part-time is
that
not till, yes,
Okay.
the contract time is not till November, so.
I just don't want to back us up to where there's not even an option, it doesn't even
Nope.
be considered.
We'll have plenty of
Got it.
time.
And Elaine, there was some concerns about some of your coaches not being, was it USPTA certified? You said that you would make sure that everybody was certified before the contract.
Yes, if that's in the scope of work in the contract with the city, we'll make sure that all our professional coaches have the certifications that you guys require. In the
Okay.
current scope of the contract, it requires USPTA certification. We have 2 coaches now that have applied, and they're, can I continue?
Quickly wrap up, sir, 'cause it's not an agenda.
Their applications are in, and they're just waiting on the reply, so.
Thank you.
Thanks. I won't let you know when it is a formal agenda item.
Yes, and I suspect it'll probably be the first meeting in September. Again, we'll have to wait for the minutes from the Leisure Services Board and bring that back.
Got it. All right,
Great, thank you.
thanks. Any other public comments on items not on the agenda?
Yeah, sorry I said no. I probably should have come up here. Tim Tumulty, 59-year-old resident of Cocoa Beach. I'm the chair of the Leisure Board, and I suggest that you watch the Leisure Board meeting. It was very detailed, what we went through. It's not just on paper. There's a lot of things said at that meeting. My plan is to meet with each of you individually and discuss it, so I can answer any questions prior to that meeting.
I fully intend on watching both the
Good.
meetings that you had.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah.
And I streamed it real time, so I'm up on what was.
Yeah, well, like I said, I'm going to reach out to each of you and we'll schedule a short meeting with you and discuss it. Okay.
Thanks. Staff reports?
Mayor, I put before each of you the Brevard County, or Florida Today, article in reference to Brevard County looks to expand lifeguard services I'll let you read through it, but it was a positive at the end of the day article. But again, if you watch the county commission meeting, you're definitely aware of that. They did look to utilizing, as it states here, Brevard County tourism, tourist development tax and 5% tax on hotels. Money is then allocated towards advertising as a tourist destination, the beach renourishment projects, grants for culture events and other tourism, whether those funds could be put toward the expanding lifeguards, and then each of the commissioners made their comments. So again, I thought it was just a good article to provide you. You can also, I can give you the point in time in the commission meeting if you'd like to go out and look at it. I can definitely send that to you. Just let me know that you would like that.
Please.
Okay.
Thank you.
I will do that. I don't believe other than that my items would be part of the agenda, sir.
Okay.
Other than, sorry, I put on here, I'm sorry, I apologize, that we're not going to cancel the August 3rd meeting. We do have items. I think we had that on originally. Let me find it.
So that's a change to E2?
E2, yes, sir. So in reference to the meeting, we thought at the time that we presented this that we may have to consider canceling that meeting because we didn't have items submitted. We do have items submitted, so we will have a regular meeting on August 3rd. Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you.
All right. Unfinished business, city attorney. Item D1.
Item D1, authorize proceeding with the construction of the new City Hall building and cultural green space for a not-to-exceed amount of $11,500,000 in executing the design-build amendment to the standard form of agreement with W&J Construction when the final guaranteed maximum price has been established. Representatives, Robert R. Hayes, City Manager, Wayne Caragino, Assistant to City Manager, recommendation authorized.
You're done, Wayne.
Okay, we have a little presentation, a couple slides to show you guys. My name is Wayne Caragino. I'm the project manager for the city on this project, so let me proceed here. So the first slide is a floor plan of the original design that was developed by Jacobs Engineering, and that particular floor plan came out to be 12,279 square feet. The estimated cost was $7,500,000, and the price came out to be $611 a square foot. That price is all in. By all in, I mean it includes all the site work. So that's where we started with this project. That was a one-story structure. It was not flood. It had no wash through. It was not storm resilient. Therefore, it was not eligible for a lot of the grant sources that we're interested in going after for the project as it stands now. So what we ended up with is this is the final plan that we're bringing before you guys tonight, and that is $11,500,000. It's just shy of 20,000 square feet, and then that comes out to be $584 a square foot. That is a two-story structure with a wash-through, so therefore it's storm resilient. And let me go to the next slide. It has the benefits of this design are, obviously, I just mentioned it's flood resilient. We have a massive exfiltration system in the front, which will treat all the stormwater, and it also separates the City Hall offices and the community room. The community room is on the first floor, which is illustrated right there. There's under-structure parking. There's also additional parking on the bottom of that. That's that site plan, actually. There's additional separate bathrooms for community use on the first floor. There's also a couple of basic showers, not any fancy showers or anything, up on the second floor for the use of the EOC personnel, because we plan on having this as our EOC, Emergency Operations Center, in the event of a storm. And so what it comes out to be is, because this is a number that a lot of people are interested in, is the administrative usable space is 274 square feet per employee. We also have an enlarged cultural green space with this layout and additional parking, and also a lot of more pedestrian walkways to invite people into the green space. So the reason why we're doing a wash through is these are just some illustrations of storm damaged area. The one everybody always shows is the one in the middle on the bottom. That was in Mexico Beach, but that structure survived. Everything else was absolutely destroyed around it. So that's hopefully, you know, our other structures are storm resilient. This, if you built a one-story, would not be. Okay, so we talked about grants. There is a program. So we went for a grant right through the appropriations process, which the governor line item vetoed. The reason why he line item vetoed is because he wanted us to go to this source. He has a pot of $100 million for resilient projects. This project will qualify for that. We've started the grant application process. The open period for the grant application process is July 1st to September 1st. So we're literally halfway there, but we are way ahead of the curve as far as, you know, getting the application together. A couple of supporting documents we need, but that grant will be for $5 million to be applied to this project. The match that they require is 50%, which we're okay with. And so the grant would not actually be approved until the next year's budget is approved on July 1st. That's when you're good to go 100%. They'll give you a nod in December that it will be included in the FDEP budget. So like all grants, until you sign on the dotted line, there's some risk involved. But we've had pretty good luck with grants. I mean, I have. So that's where we're at. We wanted to get into some of the financials. And we have Jay here, Jay Gover, and we have Patricia. You want to come up and address these slides? To the right is the grants.
So on the left side of this, Patricia Draycott, City of Cocoa Beach, CFO. On the left side of this screen, it's showing the scenario of potential sources to fund the project, which includes us receiving the grant that Mr. Caragino was just talking about. The first two fund sources come from our CRA, which would cover the cost of the cultural green space and the wash-through portion of the project. The Fund 136 is the building permits fund, and that 2.7 million is estimated costs or expense that the permit fund would benefit from that, from the use of the new city hall over a 20-year life. So it would be just prepaying their costs for a 20-year period. The 1 million is ARPA, which is just using some of our remaining available ARPA funds. The 500,000 was committed by City Commission. I think it was about 5 or 6 years ago. The City Commissioners committed $1 million of ad valorem tax revenues for the use of City Hall construction. 500 of that was used to complete the police facility, and this is the remaining 500. The contingency at a negative 1 million, it represents the grant money being received at 5 million And some of those other revenue sources can be decreased by that $1 million because the grant would require a 50% match, but the other grant sources are actually greater than the 5 million. So we would just reduce those sources to match to the grant. On the right-hand side is in the event that the city does not receive the grant fundings and how we would be able to fund completion of the project. And that would require a loan in the amount of $3.9 million. To look at our existing debt, let's see if I can enlarge that. Sorry, guys. Sorry, it's kind of hard to read, but the city currently has 5 general fund debts. 3 are revenue notes, and 2 of them are equipment leases. So the revenue notes are the current fire station construction. The other 2 were joint, rolled into one debt service, and that was the police station construction and then the energy savings, where ABM was hired to come in and remodel some of our existing buildings to save on energy loss. The last 2 are equipment leases. One is our golf carts, and the other is the fire tower truck. The total after the debt service payments in fiscal year 24, the outstanding balance is just over 11 million. And those payments in fiscal year 24 is just a little over 800,000.
Patricia, on the slide right before this,
Yep.
the one before, okay, the CRA fund money, is that saying we're gonna use CRA fund money?
That is correct.
I thought we weren't able to use CRA fund money for municipal.
Not for the actual city hall portion, but for the cultural green space,
Okay.
for the wash through with the community room, for the stage portion. So as we go through, if we go through with the construction, the general contractor will actually give us separate invoices that break out that portion that is cultural green space and CRA versus not.
Okay, so we won't get in trouble with,
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll keep them very separate.
okay, thank you.
Yep.
And a lot of that intent is that if there is a wash through there, that really becomes a main street as we have them operate possibly a farmer's market or other things. So it's open to the downtown and operations of some of the same things that you would also have on the stage. So that was the critical piece of kind of tying that all together, making it
The
a
main
public.
street, the downtown stuff.
Yes.
And there are also public restrooms there.
Yes. And a
Okay, and
public
that's how,
entity.
yeah, that's how we can separate. Okay. I thought there was something I just didn't understand. Yeah, thank you.
Could you go back one, Patricia? I'm
Of
sorry.
course.
Yeah, no problem.
So if you notice, I mean, we locked in some extremely aggressive rates on there. I think the highest interest rate we're paying on is the equipment lease, 3.79. Everything else is followed by 3 1/4. So, money at 1.8 is pretty much free money. So, great job. Thanks.
So this is a slide that just talks about why there's benefits actually to using debt to finance large capital projects such as this. Part of that is it allows the city to move forward a little quicker to complete the project and try to mitigate some of the rising costs of construction. It also takes more of a forward approach to paying for the cost of the structure, so the future taxpayers pay that cost of building the facility over a 20-year period, rather than today's taxpayers using past taxpayer dollars to pay for that cost. Also, historically speaking, and that is true very much today, municipalities tend to get a lower interest rate on debt than other for-profit companies can get, and that has to do with if we sell revenue bonds, those bonds are exempt from taxes, the interest on those bonds. Also, because the city has a much higher trust factor in that we will repay. This is just to kind of give you a shot or a little overview of where we are in the economy right now. The interest rates on the current cash that the city has invested we just invested on a 12-month at 5.9% interest. And if you kind of extrapolate that, even taking that interest rate down to a 2% over a 20-year period, it would generate almost $3 million if we kept that $6 million invested over that full 20-year period. If we took out a $6 million loan to complete the construction of the City Hall, we are looking at around 4 to 4.25% interest on that debt, and that would cost the city about $2.6 million in debt costs. Questions on the financing?
Okay, so this slide is addressing some of the challenges we're having now with where we're housed and with staff and with everybody kind of crammed into the Public Works facility. And I emphasize Public Works facility, not City Hall. The Public Works facility is really not ADA compliant. So I'm talking long-term housing of the staff there. We brought 32 people from the old City Hall. There's 39 people going to the new City Hall. There's 64 people currently crowded into the Public Works building. That comes out to be 129 square foot per person. Another issue over there is the parking. The parking is totally inadequate. So we have an agreement with the high school. That agreement ends this year. And they've not really ever kind of welcomed us in a lot. They put up with us, but they're not gonna.
So the area that we park in at the end of this next fiscal year, so for school year, they need to relook at that area for the new parking where the bus loop requirements, there's safety requirements they have to look at for the kids. And I think they have to look at, from what I recall from Principal Rendell, they have to look at both sides of the parking lot. There has to be separation from a car line versus a bus line, and they're looking at redoing the parking because of that. So they'll need that space, but they were willing to work with us this year and next year. When I'm saying next year, beginning in September through October through next September. But after that, they anticipate being on the list with the school board as to be able to pave and adjust that parking area. So
we're just trying to kind of illustrate, it has a deleterious effect on everyone there. We're crammed in. It's not, it was never meant to be what it is now. We literally have staff in storage rooms and closets, essentially. We made it somewhat work. It was always meant to be a temporary fix. It saved the city a lot of money by doing this way. So that's where we're at. And I think, let's see this other one here. Okay, so I'd have to read this one here, but basically, it's just kind of what I'm saying. It wears down on people. There have been people that left because of the parking situation, just because of the crowdedness. It makes it a little bit more difficult to attract quality people and keep them. So I don't really want to dwell on that, but I didn't hear at the beginning either the clerk or the city attorney read the actual agenda item and the recommendation that we have. Did I miss that, or?
You did.
Yeah, I did.
did you?
You read it? Okay.
Yeah.
You didn't
Okay,
miss it.
so that's our presentation, and we'll take questions and.
So the bottom floor pretty much a community room? Is that what I'm seeing?
Yeah, so we just did a snipe of the first floor. So that's the community room on top there in that box. The rest of that is part, here, let me show you this one.
Okay.
Yeah, so you can see the community room on the top. Then you have the under structures parking. And can I point out? That's the understructure parking, that's the community room,
Okay.
and then, that's underneath. Then we've gained additional parking down here because the exfiltration system pops off into the existing pond that's there. But we don't need the whole pond anymore, so we gained all that parking right there. I don't know how many slots that is.
So that's
but-
all part of like the wash through
Yes.
part? Okay,
Yes,
the
yep.
community room, the parking, okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
Is there enough parking for everyone in the city hall?
Yes.
Between the site, the parking over, between fire department and this property.
Yeah,
there
there's
and then
additional
underneath.
parking behind PD too that they can use.
Anybody else have any questions? I do. Go ahead. Commissioner.
Okay, Mike, go ahead.
So, I don't have an issue with the financing side of it. I trust that we've got the experts in terms of debt ratio and maximizing the return, whether it's invested or cash or debt. So that's not my issue. I'm just keen on the scope. It seems like there's been some pretty big scope creep. What I mean, but just from what was initially put in the RFP in terms of size and the cost bogey, now looks like the admin side. Did I read it? The initial one was like 6,900 of admin space, and now it's 12,000. What's driving that 2x? Yeah, so that original plan, so that was what we did, or what we set out for RFP, correct? That was 6,000-ish,
Yes.
and then that's grown into 12,000. What's driving that? Because my understanding is this is basically just making that a two-story building now.
You talking about the square footage?
Yeah, the difference between that first slide and the second slide, it looks like it's gone from 69 to 12.5. Is there more heads in there, or what's driving that?
We did add IT to the new facility, or to the second floor,
Okay.
because of Ian and Nicole losing our firewall, losing some of the things that happened during those two storms. We did not originally have them in that first original plan. The original plan was a completely open concept, as you see right there before you, at the bottom left section of that facility. Once we moved over to the current building, it became pretty evident in our finance and HR department that we could not have an open plan. It was definitely not, for at least for us, work conducive. So that changed that from being an open plan to separation of departments. That's it, other than those two.
That
we
drove
did-
a 2x
Well, the
increase
commi-
in size? What am I missing here?
Commissioner Hutchison, the community room and the commission chamber, those two square footages are more than this, not 1838? Yeah, that's
Yeah, so I'm,
1,300 square feet
I
more.
want
right
to
there.
understand
only
the
talking
same
about
change
administration.
between each one of those line items, but it seems like the biggest driver of square footage was 6. We've doubled that size, and it sounds like it's IT moving in there. I don't know, and
6 people.
6 people, and then adding those offices. I don't know. I think that's obviously a driver going from 5 million to 11.5.
So we really looked at a needs assessment too. There was a number of changes that the structure went through, all brought to commission. Originally, the first floor plan was kind of paraphrased as looking like a bungalow. So they went back to the drawing table and came up with a 2-story. And that was more acceptable, more accepted. But we came to the realization that if we're going to profess resilience and wash through, that we have to lead by example. So it only made sense to make this a 2-story wash through.
I really like your second plan. I think your first plan was just didn't really fit what we had going on downtown. I think your first plan is, your second plan is much nicer, but to that effect, you know, I prefer that we have it funded rather than, you know, take out a $4 million loan. I would really like to see us get the grant funding down pat before we go further with it, but I understand you guys don't want to stop and, you know, let that,
Well, the cost of construction is going up on average percentage to up to 3 a month. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Is that something that W&J can talk to? Because
Yes,
I know
yes, yes.
from the people
We
I
have,
talk to, it's roughly 1.5% a month is the
Yeah, I'm
cost?
Steve Carlisle, W&J Construction. Yes, we're historically, the last couple of years, we've seen 2 to 3%. Right now, it's slowed to about 1.5% per month. So you can just do the math on, if you push the project, you can pretty much count on that kind of increase with the current market where it's at.
I mean, that's kind of my point, is how do we get 100% growth? It's requirements, it's not industry, environment, or inflation.
So I-
That's the part I'm keen on. You know, I mean, if I open this up to my wife and say, hey, roll everything up that you want to see, and whatever it costs, I'm gonna build that house. I look at the other way, I say, okay, here's my budget, and what can we fit in there? So,
Well,
that's where I'm at.
who passed out these
I
debt?
did.
You do realize that these are all like for-profit companies, right?
Yeah, I'm just making a point. Vice Mayor.
It takes debt to make money,
Yeah, that's exactly right.
but we're not making money here.
Well, Jay, would you mind elaborating on that? What are we making on our investments right now?
Yeah, I'm not the investment advisor. Again, Jay Glover from PFM Financial Advisors LLC, the city's financial advisor on debt-related matters. But according to the most recent investment report, I think the city's assets are invested about 5.9%, which is, you know, we have a very inverted yield curve now. So you can invest out a month, 2 months, a year at rates that are actually higher than if you're investing out to 30 years. So, you know, there's definitely a yield curve shape where investing on the short end is very attractive, and then you can also lock in fairly attractive, you know, long-term borrowing rates. I'm not going to say they were where they were, you know, 2 years ago, but from a historical perspective, if you look over the long term, you know, borrowing rates in the low 4%, 4 to 4.25% range for 20-year money is still quite attractive. So, you know, there is
In theory-
obviously getting the grant is the ideal scenario. I mean, that's the ideal scenario, and I think that city would like to maximize that. But absent that, you know, there is a benefit to potentially issuing a small amount of debt versus spending reserves to fund the balance of the project in the current interest rate environment.
My point is, you know, you represent a lot of other cities, and these are long-term capital projects. I mean, we don't do this every year. This is a 60-year project, right? Unfortunately, we have been talking about this since 2000. Commissioner Williams, you might have been.
2002.
Yeah, and the price has just gone up and up and up and up, and it's going to keep going up. But in regards to how municipal cities operate, how do they fund long-term capital projects?
Yeah, I mean, most of them will fund long-term capital project with a combination of cash and debt, which is exactly what the city's doing here. We represent a number of municipalities around the country and the state, represent many in Brevard County, actually, and we have quite a number of clients that are actually out right now looking for debt financing to fund capital projects. And it's a combination of the fact that projects that were once cost, you know, X million now cost up to 2X million, and there's just a need to issue debt to start mitigating those costs and pay it over the long term. So, you know, the city's debt profile is very conservative. You have a minimal amount of debt on your general fund. And it's actually paid back over a relatively short time frame. So right now, as you pay off debt, you're going to have outstanding debt that comes off your balance sheet, and actually can layer this debt on around that to create sort of a level aggregate structure, which is what we'd look to do. So there's ways you can minimize your debt service payment, you know, by issuing a small amount of debt. But again, grant's the ideal scenario. But issuing a small $4 million loan is not going to put your credit profile anywhere near where it concerns me from a lending perspective. And quite frankly, if it was concerning, I wouldn't be able to find a lender that would give you the money, because they actually do a pretty deep dive into the city's financial status. We'll review your prior financials. They'll look at your budgets to determine if there's a revenue stream available to make that debt service payment, just like a lender would do if you go to get a mortgage for your house. So a lender's not going to give you this amount of money unless they're very confident there's a recurring revenue stream to make that debt service payment. So again, grants are ideal, but if you do need to fund it with a component of debt, this level of debt provides no concern to me in terms of the city's overall credit profile and ability to repay it.
And, you know, typically you'd use cash for a short-term asset. You want to buy, a couple of fleet vehicles, great. Those are 5-year assets, maybe 6-year, maybe 7. A building, I mean, City Hall's been there since 1963.
You guys have known that we need a new city hall since 2002. Why have we not put money aside for
Because we
this?
kept going to rollback, because we didn't do the right thing. We didn't make the tough decisions that we needed to.
The biggest issue was,
No, sir, I'm
well,
speaking.
in my opinion,
Are you gonna let me finish, sir?
yes.
Thank you. It was poor financial planning from going to rollback and saving people maybe $40 a year in taxes and not planning ahead. We should have been putting money aside on a go forward, and every capital project that we look at from now till the future generations should be setting aside money. And it's a tough thing to do, but you gotta explain it to people. Raising the millage rate a $0.25 it's a $40 increase. Nobody's getting broke over that. But it's just idiotic to think you can fund long-term capital projects with cash that we're earning nearly 6% on. We're interest on $4 million at nearly 5.5 is $220,000. Interest at 4.25, we're paying $170. So we're making $50,000 a year. That's a pretty good payback.
For now.
Go ahead, sir.
Okay, my understanding was in 2002, it was gonna be the Taj Mahal, police, fire, city hall, all in one huge project for 11.5 million, which ironically is what we're talking about now for just the city hall. But it was sticker shock, and then there was a lot of angst in the turnovers of the commission, and it never actually came to fruition. When I got on the commission in 2007, I said, police, fire, EMS, #1 priority. So there was the opportunity to build the fire department. It was like 4.3 million. But, we had the competing factions with the police and the fire. The police said we need to go first. I thought that the public safety aspect of the fire for emergencies and EMS and all that, and with partnership with Brevard County to house their ambulance there and their people there was a good thing. Commission went for it, we did it. A couple of years later, it was time to look at, can we bite off the police station? So we bit off the police station and we built the police station, and it was like 8 million or so. So, you add those two together, it's almost the same cost as this new city hall and green space. But we had to basically eat the elephant one bite at a time to get anything done there, versus it would have been smarter in 2002 to put us in debt for 11.5 million and build the Taj Mahal, but it would have been 20 years old already. So we didn't have the hurricane codes that we have now, so we would have had issues with that, and we wouldn't have had now we're gonna have a wash through on the city hall, which is gonna save us in the long run, okay? So time has benefited us some on having better buildings, but it's not benefited as much as, with the finances.
I was just talking about putting money aside for the replacement of the building. I wasn't talking about building it back then.
You're 100% right.
So
It needs to be budgeted every year.
Right, so, can I ask a couple questions? Okay. So it looks like the CRA is contributing about 2.3 million for the culture of green space. Is that what I saw on the slide? Okay. And then I'm curious, city manager, I'll ask you, and you can defer to whoever you want. Why are we moving the EOC? We built the fire department with that room on the 3rd floor specifically to be an EOC.
Yes, sir. We lost the firewall this past year at that same facility at the fire station. So at least from the IT portion has to be more secure than it was there. And at that time, I think when we built what we thought was secure. But we had problems. We lost the firewall. We lost the servers. So this area would have just a more secure area for those two.
Well, why can't we?
The EOC still, in essence, would still operate out of the fire department, but the IT portion needs to operate out of the city hall in order to be safe. We can't do anything more than what we have at the current fire station with that current system. We've replaced it, we've updated it, but it still has its weak points.
And we can't modify it so that it doesn't have weak points?
Well, right now it took to the, one of the challenges is it took to the transformer that's at the corner of, I think it's at the corner of, I think it's across the street, so maybe at the corner of Sackett, but it's connected to the same, unfortunately the grid, the way it's set up, that fire station and police station are connected in the same to the same transformer, which was part of our problem last year. So we have to connect this facility to a different one and to a different source. We've had that conversation with FP&L. That was one of our fail points last year.
But you could reroute what's feeding the fire station and the IT stuff to the other FP&L source.
So we would backfeed it. So we had talked about having a redundant system and backfeed the fire station into a new one, and then also the one at the city hall. We would actually have two systems. We're not going to get rid of the one at the fire station because it runs a lot of important assets there as far as the fire station. But the capacity of it is not what it needs to be at this point.
And you don't have the space to increase the capacity?
No, sir.
Even though
it's in a very.
Even though the memory of this cell phone used to be, about as big as one of these tables.
So the room that this is in, that the IT is just barely bigger than that little niche that's right there. It's not a very large area. If you've been over to the EOC, it's right beside the door that goes into their.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've been there.
So that was just the problems we had with that facility, with that location.
Okay, so just for clarity, you're saying that we're going to have now a totally redundant computer system in the new city hall that's fed from a different leg of FP&L.
Yes, sir.
So, and is there going to be a automatic transfer switch? So if one side goes down, the other side picks up?
I suspect that will be one of Kevin's requirements, and our engineer, I don't think we have Kevin here, but we did discuss that. So that needs to be further discussed, but yes, that was the initial discussion.
Because that's what we do with
Right.
universal substations at the Space Center, is we feed two legs of FP&L, one coming from the north, one coming from the south, with the automatic transfer switch.
Right, and one goes down, the other one picks it up, and we go forth. And that was the discussion we've had. So I don't know that has changed, and it had not at last
Is
conversation.
that baked into this current plan and costs?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I had that same concern that Commissioner Hutcherson had, that we doubled the size of the admin space. And it was kind of weird that we're gonna have the EOC showers in a different building than where the EOC is.
Well, if they're staying over there, there's only two. So it's one in the ladies' room and a separate one in another area. They're not in separate offices or anything. Again, that
So
was
in the
just-
middle of a hurricane, if they want to take a shower, they gotta go from one building to the other building to take a
No,
shower?
again, if
Or they
I-
get their shower on the way there?
If IT is in that building, they will remain in that building for safekeeping, and that's the building they would be in for showering or anything. So they don't leave. We've been very cautious in the past. I mean,
How many IT people are we adding to the building?
There are There's, I believe, 7, if I'm not mistaken.
I heard 6, but now it's
Yeah.
7.
Yeah.
So that doesn't seem to add up to that much more square footage, since that we're already planning on having the additional IT element in the new city hall, so.
So one of the things, can I chime in on the square footage, because I didn't quite get that at the beginning, but, the initial plan was, an open plan. As you can see, there's no separate, offices, and it's just an open plan. We did a study on that as far as departments, and we came to the realization that that's not gonna work. We have departments that have to be separated. For example, HR, they have to have privacy in their offices. They often interview people, have employee-type issues where, it just won't work in an open. So with that being said, we came up with kind of a blend of open space and office area, and in the process of doing that, the square footage increased.
I'm not seeing any open space there. It looks like all offices.
There's open space right here, and there's open space right here.
But everything else turned into offices.
A significant amount of it did, yeah.
Okay, so the footprint increased of the building, and we've eaten into the green space, so let me just do some public math. 12,000. Everything but the community room is the footprint, is that fair to say?
No, it's 2-story now.
No, I understand, but the second story
Yeah.
is everything summed up but the community room. So 16,000 is the footprint, the 19,600 minus the 3,750 for the community room, which is the only feature on the first floor. So the footprint of that structure is 16,000 square feet. Go back.
Each floor is approximately between 14 and 15,000 feet per
Okay,
floor.
15, fair enough, 15, then go back one chart, whoever's driving, the original plan, 15,000. So this footprint is all on one floor, so the footprint is 12,000. So we've taken 3,000 feet out of the green space with the new plan.
Now, you've actually added some area to green space that was not going to be green space before, if you go back to the original site plan.
Well, no, I'm talking about footprint. The
Yeah, it
footprint of the
actually
building
increased.
is 15,000, whereas here is 12,000 with everything else being green space and parking. So if we've grown the size of the footprint, we've reduced green space. And that
I don't
seems like
think
a
in
hot
the
button.
original RFP, I don't
Yeah.
think any of this area in here was a part of that original RFQ.
Like I said, I'm totally fine, totally confident that we're gonna do the right debt ratio. It's the scope, I think, has grown significantly. That's driving the cost. So I don't support 11.5.
I mean, Jeremy, if you're okay with the debt, then what's the difference with having a nicer building? I mean, if that's your argument, I think the real argument though is, if the residents think, okay, we just voted a 6.14 tax rate, and then we had to cut Main Street and paving and what was the other thing? Something else. Then who's to say that we're going to be able to afford to put another $4 million debt on this
So I'm
table?
not talking about the debt value, I'm talking about the structure, whether we invest or pay cash, whatever. That I'm totally fine with.
I mean,
I think
inevitably,
it's getting the building requirements nailed down before we just open-ended to. I mean, we have effectively, I'm probably gonna get skewered for saying this, but we have a functioning city hall and public works. I'm not saying that's a long-term solution, but all that capacity is gonna do what? If everyone moves downtown, what are they gonna do? That space is now vacant, or?
It's occupied by the public works and the utilities. Again, we've got growth coming in there. At some point, we know that due to our cut.
But it's enough to accommodate a functioning city hall, and we're saying, we don't need that, let's build.
well, we overbuilt it. I mean, I guess, and we overbuilt stuff, but at the same time, now look, because of that, we have a place to use in an emergency like it is now. But
And that, I know most of you walked through that complex with all the garages and everything that's there. It was a little over $5 million back in the day.
Wayne, I had a question about the community room. So the community room is how many square feet? It was
I didn't hear
the
you.
community room?
750?
How many square feet is the community room?
It's just under 2,000. It's 1984 or something. The 37 includes bathrooms and the kitchenette, so
Yeah.
the,
And an office area in there
Yes.
for.
Were we planning, like, I'm kind of wondering if that much square footage is the most, and I'm asking you, if is that the most efficient use of that area? Or, I mean, would a little bit more parking, like that would paid parking be more, if we scale down the community room size under there? I'm just wondering if you guys thought of that, or do we need, I mean, what were we thinking of using that community room for?
so that's your rental space. So that's a revenue area.
Oh, it's a rental
You're gonna
space,
rent it
okay.
out for evenings and so forth. You're gonna have, if Freedom 7 wishes to be there, and that's something you all wish to do, they would be there during the days. Rentals for other things, that's one of the reasons the kitchenette needed to be placed in there, and also the connectivity to the restrooms to make it very easy. Again, open for the public, it's what it's for, it's the public's.
So, Mr. W&J, can I ask you a question?
Steve,
Steve. Sorry, Steve, I forgot your name. So the construction of this first floor community room, I would anticipate you're trying to build it as storm resilient as possible, no drywall, maybe all hardy board, something so that if there's a flooding event that we're using, that's going through our wash through and flooding that area, that it won't be, we got to call ServPro, and well, we might still have to call ServPro, but I would think that it could be constructed in a way where it could be cleaned up and used again.
Yeah, to a point, yeah, it's masonry, it's gonna have polished concrete floors, it's not gonna have ceramic tile, anything that's gonna get moldy or soiled or anything from a wash through. Now, you'll have an operable partition in there that, if that has to get replaced, there's a wall there that's movable that divides the two spaces.
Yeah, that's a
That's a $30,000 item that if there is an event, you're going to lose that, and you'll.
well, if you open it, you might be able to salvage it.
Well, it doesn't raise, it slides.
Right. So if you slide it to both sides and strap it to the wall, and water
It's
comes.
nothing, the whole point of the wash through is for water, not for wind. It's really for water.
Right.
So it's still gonna get wet. It's just like that wall right there.
Right, but you could buy that partition out of a material that wouldn't be permeable to water, and therefore it would be able to be dried out and reused. I'm just
Well,
hypothetical.
one of the things that was looked at was you can get a wall that will raise, right? It's $160,000. One that slides is gonna be $30,000. So
Okay,
you
and the
have 5 storm
likelihood
events to
that,
replace
the
that.
likelihood that it's gonna get completely damaged, in my mind, now, if it needs to have some soundproofing to it, then I guess it couldn't be built out of a material that's water resistant.
And it is soundproof to separate the two
Okay,
spaces.
okay. So then, my last question, Mayor. Patricia, could you tell me more about Fund 136 and go back to that slide?
So Fund 136 is the building permits fund. That is where the building permit fees for the new construction and the, like the Westin and the Westgate, where they take down an old one and they put in something new and better. So all those permit fees go into this fund because state statute restricts how we can use those funds.
So we can use it for this purpose?
Because we are really using it just for the purpose of the employees that are part of that fund and their use of that facility. So we use that per square foot, the 274 square feet per employee. We use that number to calculate what their cost of that building. We use that to calculate the utilities, the electricity, the water, all of that. And there's a whole calculation that goes into then what is that cost per year per employee that works for that building permits fund, and then extend that out to a 20-year period, and that represents that fund's usage of that facility over a 20-year period.
Okay, so it's 20 years at 2.7. So hypothetically, economic downturn, we're not getting all this money in for building permits like we're expecting. Do we still have that money?
That is the idea behind using that is it's based on projects that are already underway, such as the West End, such as the Westgate. Tanja can speak to the rest of them. There's quite a few that we have.
If you're speaking over a 20-year period, I can't tell you what's going to happen next year, let alone.
No, it's right now.
The expense this is representing their expense, their annual cost of using that facility per year over a 20-year period.
Whether they put out any building permits or not.
It's
That
an
is their
allocation
cost.
The
method.
rates are getting.
But we still get to use that money legally.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
So for Jeremy's point, though, since we have that extra square footage, we're actually able to use more funding for it, right?
That's correct, because they're
So-
occupying a larger
It's-
piece
Say
of
that
the
again?
area.
That, some of that funding, or the funding that we're getting is because of the amount of square footage that we have for our workers. So if you cut that down, in essence, we'll lose some funding.
But Fund 136 is our money.
Right.
It's our money, but it's restricted to only.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, it's not, we're getting it from the state or something.
So if the square footage per employee goes down, then so does that number, to what Commissioner Capizzi is saying.
And we have to provide to the state the plan as to how we're going to spend those monies. So once you have those monies, so let's say Weston comes in and pays just $1 million of their 1.9 that they have in their development agreement that they worked out with you a couple years ago. If they come in and pay $1 million of that, we, through our audit process, must provide to the state the plan as to how we plan on utilizing those monies for those employees affected by that fund. So our plan is, very simply put, it is the use of those dollars for those people. We have one commissioner, Capizzi, who mentioned this today, parking. So we're even looking at the parking space those people could utilize and also include that in that.
I would think that some of the impact from if we're getting $1 million from Weston, the 1.8, then I would think a substantial chunk of that money should be spent on beefing up the infrastructure where all that runs off into.
No, this has to be used for building. So those are building fees. They can only be used in the building department. They can only be used for those people. We can't transfer them to an infrastructure.
Okay.
So it's raising the rate of the building employees that we charge internally, we burden them with. And we're saying we can use that.
I guess if you want to
allocation for
look at
20
it that
years.
way, it could be that
So
perspective.
we could be stuck with if the revenue stream doesn't come in, they're gonna be charging those higher rates for the next 20 years.
No,
Just
we're not going to
change
pass through rate charges, no. It does not change anything to the building permit fee, which is what you're now saying. So that's different than
it. Say again?
the employee.
Quick question. So a couple points. The debt service on $4 million at 4.25 is about $300,000 a year. Is that baked into our budget at 614?
We have not we put some monies in there, but I don't think we put that level, right?
I think the debt service payment on the $6 million was around on 20-year debt was around $330, $350. So on a $4 million, it'll be a little less.
Yes, so the actual 4.4 million over 20 years is about $330,000. Crank that down to 3.9 million, it's about 300K. The 6 million, which was the kind of the max number you were talking about, was about 450K per year. So that's sort of your range, 300K to 450 between 3.9 and $6 million borrowing over over 20 years.
And to your point, Mayor, we load budget, in a budget, you load debt first. That's the first thing you commit to pay for. Then you go through and you commit to your employees, and you commit to your operations, then you fund capital. There are some cities that only fund a certain dollar in capital, to Commissioner Capizzi's point. Therefore, if they want to just fund $1 million and they have $1.7 million, they put the 700 into a whatever account you wish to call it. If you want to call it a reserve or a restricted, whatever you want to call it, we can set it up. But they fund a flat amount each year. There are cities that will fund a flat amount, $300,000 or $500 for their parking or their paving, and that's it. Because again, they've tried to reduce some of that flux that you see when you have a capital. Others will just, as much as they have available, they'll put it toward that. But your debt would be paid for and budgeted first.
So if we pass, we don't have a motion, do we? We're just discussing.
I'd rather continue discussing before anybody
Okay,
pushes the motion.
no, I'm not making a
Okay.
motion. I just want to make sure there wasn't one. But should we approve this as read by the city attorney, would that authorize the city to go start trying to lock in the debt?
I don't think we would need that, and I would refer to Jay. I don't think we need it right away, so.
Well, I mean, interest rates aren't going any lower.
You can't lock it that long, though.
Yeah, so ideally, you're going to go through a process and you're going to get a $5 million grant, and we're not going to have to come back before you to issue debt. If that grant does not come through, you would at a later date as a commission have to approve the issuance of the debt via a bond resolution. And to your point about interest rates, and by no means do I know where interest rates are going to be, or I would probably be out on my boat somewhere in the ocean. But the Federal Reserve just did raise rates 25 basis points yesterday. There's some talk that could be the last increase. There's talk there could be another increase kind of later this year. And the Fed did hint at potentially rate cuts at some point next year. So the thought that rates, could be lower next year, say if you come back in July after the budget cycle comes through on the state, and you don't get the grant, then you would probably come back before you for a debt issuance. I'm not going to kind of prognosticate where interest rates are going to go, but I would not expect them to be higher this time, summer next year than they are today.
You're a prophet.
What was that?
You're a prophet.
Well, again, I can't guarantee that because a lot of things are going to happen, and we'll be facing an election and things. But the Fed is nearing its end of its cycle of interest rate increases, and there's some thought that they might have accomplished doing what they're doing without a recession. Again, all to be determined. Things change daily, but it's kind of a long-winded answer. I don't think you're able to lock in the debt today. You're going to wait to see if you get the grant proceeds, which it sounds like you'll probably know, by the end of this year.
Well, we thought we knew we were going to get $1.5 million for the hurricane hardening of the structure that our lobbyists worked for and got into the budget that got vetoed.
Sounds like it got vetoed 1.5 with a chance of getting $5 million. Though,
yeah, but it's a carrot.
I'm not a grant person. I'm just suggesting that you cannot lock in the debt today.
That was my question.
Yeah.
Would
all
you
that
guys,
has to come back before you at a later date.
Would you guys be interested or willing, if we did take on debt, to do a 10-year so we pay it off sooner? Or is that something you guys want to drag out? I'm just saying.
I'll chime in.
I think Jay.
You're the expert.
I'm not, but I'm just going to chime in. The longer-term rates are lower right now than shorter-term rates. What he was just referring to is called an inverted yield curve, and that's what we have. Your short-term rates are higher than your long-term rate. So borrow the money. We have so many deferred projects because of all the rollbacks over the years, and we've never allocated enough in our budget process to ensure that everything. I'd rather take the savings and do the 20-year, take that 10-year money and put it in a kitty to make sure that whoever's sitting up here 60 years from now doesn't have to go through this nightmare again. That there's a kitty of money set aside proper long-term financial planning. We need to be thinking 50, 60 years out.
And if I might, Mayor, just to kind of illustrate one other thing, you can take out 20-year money and you can build in some call flexibility into that such that if there are additional revenues in a given year, you could potentially pay the debt down early. Or if interest rates decline, you can refinance it. Generally, there's some type of lockout period. So you could do a 20-year financing that has a call option at year 10. So at that point, you could potentially pay the debt down. If rates are 2.5% at that time, you can refinance to 4.5 or 2.5. And the city has done that occasionally. And some of these loans you'll see up here, we're actually refinancings in a lower interest rate environment. So all that to say is you could do a longer amortization and still leave you some flexibility to pay it off early to minimize the interest cost over the long term.
Well, I like the long-term option as long as we have the option to pay it off early.
Right, so to answer your question, yeah, we've got professionals that'll optimize that
It would
balance.
make more
I'm
sense to
totally-
do long-term at a lower rate and then refinance 5 years down the road to a lower rate beyond that.
I have a question for the W&A spokesman.
W&J.
W&J, I'm sorry.
Steve.
Steve. So talk me through the value engineering plan. Is this it? Is there options that we can delay? My understanding of that and the background I have is it would be parsed out of, here's your top 3 drivers of this cost, and we would have the, include, exclude, disposition ability to strike things or include them.
Right, and that process really hasn't gotten started yet.
Okay.
We're at like 50% drawings right now, and we've been modifying the structure to try to get the structure down as tight as it can be to accomplish the floor plan. Then as the drawings develop and we get into the hard design on electrical, mechanical, everything else, we'll be looking at those individually to try to bring the number in below that, obviously. But that's the process that will be going on. Once you approve the project, the architect will keep moving forward, and we'll be working to get to that number.
Is there, if you want to go on record on any kind of ROM target of what we could beat that 11.5 by? No?
Not right now. Because not knowing all of your needs,
Sure.
I can't speak to that.
And then it does say here, even if we authorize proceeding, the agreement won't go into effect until we get that guaranteed maximum price.
For construction.
Correct.
Yes, we'll be working through the process, and
So
we will
we'll
get
see
to
this again before we commit to the full funding.
Yeah, this is kind of like the budget where we kind of blew it, because that was our top end. We took a whole option off the table.
Actually, what we're asking for is a not to exceed $11.5 million.
Max.
Max, and then.
I think
you
there's
give us the
opportunities to your
you give
point.
us
So
permission
what is-
to
this is
execute.
built in this
but
number?
it's also caveated that says when the final guaranteed maximum price has been established. So the guaranteed maximum price isn't guaranteed to be below 11.5 at this point.
Right.
Then we won't execute that agreement.
Is it also
Are we giving
guaranteed?
them our number and tell them to come up with $11,457,038?
No, we're telling them to get under that number.
It's a construction management agreement, totally transparent, everything is on the table. That number doesn't mean anything to us other than we gotta get under it.
I mean, this
And we're
is-
gonna work with your team to
This is
get.
exactly how we did the police station and everything else, and at the end of the day, we reduced the final number.
Okay.
Well, that's why I'm looking at you three.
Well, what we're
legacy-
saying is, we're not gonna break ground
At this number.
until we get that. So we can proceed, if there's a motion to proceed with the bogey of 11,500,000 tonight, and it passes, then we're gonna see this again before we actually commit the funds.
So describe what those numbers were on the police station. The NTE was 10 million, we hit 9, which is ballpark. I wasn't
I
around
don't
then.
recall, but there was an awful lot of
That's not
value.
what we're asking for, though. We're asking for the green light to go ahead, to get a GMP below that number, to execute the GMP, and to start the project, to break ground on the project.
But Steve's not guaranteeing
that's-
us that he can get under that number.
Yeah, that's not what it says here.
You are, Steve?
We
per
will
the
get
motion-
under
It says to
11.5.
execute-
Now,
To
what
exceed
does your
amount.
program get?
Per the
at?
motion,
I know it says
or
that,
what
but
was read,
He did say that.
if you make the motion, then we just negated that whatever the guaranteed maximum price ends up being established, we don't get another take at it. Is that what you're saying?
This is it.
What we're asking for permission to do is execute an amendment to the original contract with W&J, which was a lump sum design, architectural design for $680,000. That's what's going on right now. Once they get to the point where they can get drawings around 70, 80, 80%, they can go out and bid all their subcontractors.
Yeah, right.
And then they can come up with an actual price. That will be brought to us in an amendment to that original contract.
Brought to us,
And in that
or
amendment,
brought to us?
one of the we're asking for permission for us to go ahead. The reason
So
being
if
is
we
you
vote
can't.
for this tonight, we're never gonna see it again.
No, you're gonna see it when we have a ribbon cutting.
So they're provisioning $11.5 million to spend up to that. Anything above that, we'd have to re-vote on, is the way I'm reading it, unless I'm misinterpreting that.
Yeah, 11, that's what
I
I'm
don't know
saying,
why we
11 and a
don't
half
just-
is
So,
the max.
again, we can remove, I mean, the motion
I
can have
agree.
that
And I
removal.
thought that's why I'm pushing to get that.
That's why the way I read it.
Right.
And-
It
and I
says
think
when the final guaranteed maximum price has been established, which I haven't seen.
Then we can execute that agreement. Isn't
I
that's,
think it needs to come back to us before you execute the agreement. What's wrong with that?
Are you guys concerned about the cost?
Yes,
Yeah.
I'm concerned about the growth, the scope growth, cost, size, everything.
Would it make you feel more comfortable if you knew we had that grant?
Well,
Yes.
Of course.
Yes.
But I don't, my confidence level in that is about 10%.
Is it, Miss City Manager, is this 3.9 debt? Is it not to exceed that debt?
Right, I mean, we already have the other number, the other sources identified, so the debt would be 3.9.
So not to
If we don't
exceed that
receive the
debt.
5 million. So I would,
For the building that we're building, 3.9 with everything else.
Well, all I'm saying, Keith, is we're given our authority to our project manager, Wayne, who's very good, and he's gonna pursue that grant as strongly as he can, whether he has to bring this back to us again or not, okay? But I'm just asking that if he gets to make, we give him authorization to proceed, when he gets that guaranteed maximum price, to bring it back to us for one more go-ahead.
at a special meeting as soon as we receive it so that we can go forward.
Right.
Okay.
We would budget.
I mean,
off
I'm
the-
fine with that, but just for the record, the way this reads is, we're asking for a not-to-exceed number of $11,500,000 and executing the design-build amendment to the standard form of agreement with W&J Construction when the final guaranteed maximum price has been
Okay, but
established.
we want
That's
you-
part of that design-build amendment. That's all a document that is one in the same.
Okay.
So we
well,
are
when
asking.
when you get that, when the guaranteed maximum price has been established, please bring it back to us so that we can discuss it and see how it goes.
Okay, you guys are calling the shots, not me.
Okay?
And the value engineering could be executed after that number, right? We're not too late in that process.
That's now.
Gotcha,
Get
so you're
to that.
rolling up, and then there's gonna be select items that we could line item out and get that price
All
down.
right, as long as we're gonna get another shot at this, I'm willing to move to proceed with the construction of the new City Hall building and the cultural green space with a not-to-exceed amount of $11,500,000 and authorize staff to execute the design building amendment to the standard form of agreement with W&J Construction and bring it back to us when the final guaranteed maximum price has been established. You got that, Lori? I'll look for a second.
I'll second.
May I just one, so, I've been trying to rack my brain on the square footage since we talked about it early this afternoon. When we set and put together the original plan, and I would say we need to probably go ask Kevin with Jacobs, this was based on the area that we had to be able to build a one-story. So the footprint, as you referred to it, was based on what space we had, because there was also a requirement on the green space. And then we fit everything into that. It was not necessarily built on, and they were able to work some of the spaces in there for the open floor plan, but that was the only way we were able to get there. It was based on that footprint of City Hall that we had in the back where the parking lot was, and that was predetermined by Jacobs, if I remember correctly. I'll go back and look at my notes, but in no way did we give them any square footage or anything to that degree, other than we had suggestions of open plan, which we tried to go with because he couldn't get us offices. He tried. I think several of you, Commissioner Williams, you might have sat with us in our office with with Jacobs at the time when they tried to show us some offices. We were so far out of bounds, we couldn't even come close to maintaining the area. So the footprint by which we had to stay within in order to then get the cultural green space and the space that they needed. Because at no point did we let that grow or creep into their area. That was a restricted area. So I do remember that. I'll look to see the notes, but I also know that this was, I believe, 100 seats in this chamber, and the community room was not the size as to what it is down below, so on the first floor. But that was the restriction, not necessarily anything else. We tried to fit everything else into that. We had to change number of conference rooms. We again didn't have the space. We also had a lobby there that did not have two allocated spaces for collections and dollars and so forth. So some of those were the restrictions, but I'll look for those
Can you go up,
notes.
Wayne, 2 charts so I can follow the numbers? Like I said,
To the original plan.
I think it was chart 2 or 3. Go up a couple, keep going, keep going. I'm sorry, the other way, hit 2 on there.
So we had to fit that, the space, the footprint as you spoke of it. That was what we had to deal with. Not going up. We had a plan B from Jacobs of going up, and it was 10 or 12,000. I don't even remember that
Actually,
number.
too, on this, they had an annex building, so they, at that time, realized that was gonna be too small,
An annex building was over by the fire station in that area instead of parking.
which
So-
was taking up green space, and so even at that time, they recognized that this was too small.
This, the second story actually increases our green space.
It did.
I think you can
Well,
compare
no, I
it
think
to,
it decreased. That's what I'm not
No,
following.
it actually increased it.
What's the,
It's roughly 50%.
Yeah, it increased it, I don't know.
I mean, the lot is fixed. There's a 12,004 square foot, 1-story building. We expand that to 15,000 square foot. How do we gain space in green space? I'm not following you.
One moment. We went up.
No, the footprint.
because they moved the parking
Parking
over,
is underneath.
and then they let more parking because they got rid of that
We
one
were taking up green space for parking.
thing. But as to
We
your
were
to your
using
point
green
about
space for
the
parking.
But also
We gained
the,
20
They
spots.
put the parking underneath.
and then
I'll
the
bring a chart
stage.
next Thursday.
to your point about the space that went up, I mean, you can compare it to a 1960s closet where you just slide open your doors and you use your closet, compared to now you can have a nice walk-in closet, which is more comfortable and easier to use.
Been in my house. We have some public comment. Go ahead, sir.
Rick Anderson, 1800 Minuteman Causeway, and I did serve on the committee to advise us, and I'm really excited by the final plan. I think it came out really good. And Commissioner Hutcherson, yes, the original 12,000 square foot footprint is now larger, but the parking is now underneath the building that was going to come out of the green space. So yes, in the final plan, there's a net gain of green space due to the fact that there's parking underneath the building. And it looks like the original plan that we were
Yeah, hold that chart right there. Yep.
the original plan that we were given had a surface parking lot that was going to take up a huge amount of the green space. I see that has been taken out of this, which was one of our recommendations. So in fact, this does provide for more green space than the single-story 12,000 square foot building would have.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Anybody else? Mr. Lowe's?
John Lose, 444 Dempsey Drive. I was also on that committee that Wayne led, and a couple of recollections I have from the task force on the City Hall design. The original draft, which we all saw, the single floor draft, I don't think that was not purpose designed. It wasn't laid out where people had determined how many people are going to work there and what are the workspaces and areas that we need. It was not purpose designed. I think way back then in the early days, there was a magic number that people talked about. How much is a city hall? Oh, that's 6 million or whatever. There was some magic number. So the first draft was, well, what can you get for that much money? Well, we got a one-floor building and it's only so big. I don't think it was ever purpose designed. This building that we're looking at now is now more purpose designed. It's thought out. We know the number of people. We know the workflow. It's well more advanced than that first one, which really wasn't, it really didn't fit the city of Cocoa Beach. It's okay, if you got this much money, this is what you can do. I think this is a better fit for what we're trying to do. So, and regarding the administrative area growth, okay, that's a very good point, Jeremy, that you brought up, Commissioner Hutcherson. But as Wayne said in the first draft, it was already known that the footprint was very small. It was already identified, and that's why the original site plan that everybody here in this room got showed an annex, because we thought, we're going to need probably more space. And at that time it was discussed, well, maybe that's phase 2. Maybe it's phase 2. Myself, I didn't think phase 2 was very smart, because for the very reason we've said earlier, construction costs are going up by the hour. So if you have a project that needs to be this big and you want to phase in this later, well, that's just going to cost so much more later. If you think you need it, you have to build it now, because it becomes cost prohibitive if you push it into the future. It's cost prohibitive. And that site plan had an annex. And the other thing about the growth in the administrative area is there was a number that was provided to us on the task force, and it said that the average workspace for a person was going to be a number. And I can't remember the number, but it was an extremely small number. And it was equal to a small cubicle. And the reason I say that is because you can have work capacities in small cubicles, but that was the average space. So that includes the city manager and everybody. The average space was like a cubicle. And that didn't make any sense. So I think there's reasons how we went 6 to 12, and I don't think it's because the scope grew. I think it's because the building is now purpose designed, and I think the grab at the original square foot per person, I think it was arbitrarily way too low, and it would be hard to attract people in the future if you said, this is your work spot right there at that table, that's where you work. I don't think a lot of people would be interested in that. So I don't think it was so much scope growth, is now we have a better idea of what we need. Thank you.
Melissa Byron. What's interesting is when the fire station was built, it was larger than what they replaced 3 times. When the police station was built, again, it was replaced bigger 3 times. City Hall is larger, but not 3 times. So, City Hall waited their turn, basically, as Commissioner Williams pointed out. We did fire, we did police, and it was City Hall's turn. This is a 65-year-old building. It needs to be replaced. The air quality, and you can't keep putting people on top of people and in closets and in storage spaces and think you're going to provide a good work environment and you're going to have people work for the city of Cocoa Beach if that's what they were thinking of doing. So I applaud you for going forward. I wish you would follow exactly what the agenda item said, which is authorize proceeding not to exceed 11.5, and let's get going. Let's build it. And if you're worried about financing, there's another source of financing, and it comes from the CRA, because the CRA will sunset in 2031, okay? A 20-year loan is gonna take you through to 2043. So that gives you 12 years of CRA money that will come back to the general fund to the tune of right now dollars, $350,000. It'll probably be more. The CRA TIF money coming back to the city will pay for this by itself. So don't worry about the money, it's there. You're gonna get it, and you're gonna be able to use 12 years of it. So remember what we're looking for. We're looking for a 60-year building. We're looking for having to have some growth. We're looking for, let's start it. Quit postponing it. As you said, 2002 is when we were gonna do it. Great. It's now 21 years later. Let's go. Quit saying, well, let's see what the numbers are. You've got the money. Let's go for it. And say exactly what it says, not to exceed 11.5 million.
Anyone else?
That comment?
One more public comment. And then you may, sir.
Tim Tumulty, Cocoa Beach. Commissioner Hutcherson, I believe I have the answer for you. If there's is there a community room on this first one?
Yes.
1,938 square feet. That's your 2,000 feet right there. Because now that community room is underneath the second floor. Follow?
That's your, yeah.
So you basically have a community room plus your 12,000. That's roughly a little over 14,000 square feet of footprint, as you correct? Now on the new version puts that same square footage on the second floor, and now your community room is underneath. Does that make sense?
No, but I think it's the parking is the addition that's growing the footprint from 12 to 16.
No, the footprint is your administrative plus your community room and commission chamber and all those. That's your footprint. That hasn't changed. Oh, that's not this one, on the previous slide.
7,000 square feet.
So you're talking 12,000, total of 12,000 square feet. Oh, that's where the number's wrong. You're getting 12,000 square feet for, it is not just administration.
What's the
The
point in
community
arguing
room,
this though?
the community room, that's what it is. Community room's 1,900 square feet.
I got one other question that actually more relevant.
Oh, thank you. More relevant to me.
That was good.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Keith.
It's, if for some reason we didn't get that $5 million grant, I mean, is there other grants that we could possibly go off of after, beyond that?
I'm sure there are right now. We've only been given a couple that are out there, and we're applying for those. So,
Okay.
but they come out throughout the season.
Okay, so even if we didn't get it, we would still continue to try to find more money?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
All right.
I don't.
All right, so to continue on, I'm going to lose some time here, probably. Basically, getting that loan at a lower rate than what we're earning on that money. We have the money, and we could, so for every $1 million, basically we're making roughly, I think, $15,000 on the money by borrowing the money. If I could borrow $1 million at 3% and earn 5%, I would do it every day, and I wouldn't have to work anymore. That makes sense?
Yes, in a perfect world, that does make sense if the interest rates on your investments would stay at that percent as it is right now.
Right.
Yes.
And they've been pretty consistent.
For the last year, yes.
For the last 20 years. They're very consistent. Absolutely, they are.
May I ask, I'll ask you, and you can answer me or not. What Melissa was saying about the TIF money, we sunset in 2031 and then all that TIF money's ours?
That's correct. It is at your discretion of general fund monies. It'll still stay in the CRA, but you can utilize it.
The TIF and the CRA agreement goes away.
In 2032.
And now the county gets their cut.
The county gets.
Oh, I'm sorry, the
that
county.
tax money from then on, which we're currently getting in our CRA. So we actually lose that portion of the money. But because the property values have gone up, we actually bring in more money, but that's the same for everything else in the city.
But there's a loan right now in the CRA Okay, so that becomes part of the cities at some future date. I don't recall the exact number.
Yeah, but it was alluded to that we get to keep the TIF money.
I know, it sunsets
And
too,
we
but I don't know
don't
what
get,
year.
we don't get to keep the TIF money, it goes back to the county.
The TIF money stays with
Hang on, so it sounds like those 12 years, they go from restricted funds to general fund. Is that forecasted value baked into this
no,
funding?
no.
So I'm with Commissioner Williams,
I
it sounds
know.
like we don't get the opportunity to use that money, it goes back to the county.
We absolutely get that money.
We get half of that money. If you look at the way it's split right now, Patricia, do you
All
have
right,
the
Patricia,
CRA?
that's what I was
Why don't we
gonna
build
ask,
that
but I
into
thought I'd
the
give you a shot at it.
financing?
The CRA TIF money there's two components to it. Part of it comes from the cities ad valorem, part of it comes from the county. The county portion goes back, but the city's portion of that TIF comes back into the general fund ad valorem.
So is that value forecasted into the overall?
Not yet.
No. The county portion right now is 465,000 and the city portion is 877,000.
Okay.
That's the
So-
current year numbers.
So we can expect after 2031, a potential for an extra $800,000 into the city's general.
So that helps his debt question. That's all I'm trying to pull on.
Which doesn't count, by the way, those surf condos, which will be the first new project built in 20 years.
Fair enough, but we can forecast out what that value is gonna be for those 12 years, 8 years from now. That's all I'm asking. And that relieves pressure on.
Well,
the
yeah,
debt
but we're
value.
not gonna spend that potential $800,000 that we're gonna get today. We're gonna wait until, we're gonna make this loan, do this project. In 2031, we'll somebody else will figure out what we're gonna do with that $800,000 a year to make
All right.
ends meet at the end. I'm ready to call the question.
I am. We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries 4-1. Moving on.
That was it. Oh.
New business.
Hey, this is new business,
E1.
item 1. Request to consider adjusting parking charging from paid parking to other for North First Street, Cocoa Beach. Representative Keith Capizzi, Vice Mayor. Recommendation discussed. This was added July 25th, 2023.
Okay, so yeah, I was actually, am I allowed to have somebody speak on behalf of the reason why I brought this up?
Well, can you tell us?
Oh yeah, I'll tell you, I'll talk about it a little bit. So.
Tell us what your proposed change is.
So, yeah, okay, so as you know, we all just voted in for all this paid parking and all that. And it's put a hardship on some of the businesses, but in particular, businesses that don't have any parking at all, I really feel bad for because we took away their parking. So for example, the Green Room is on First Street, which is still like one of those, all those downtown areas that have the 90-minute parking, like the Tiny Turtle, Fat Donkey, the Dancers, and all the other stuff. But Dancers has their own parking, so that they don't need extra parking. But Green Room doesn't have parking, and I don't think it's fair that we took away the only parking that they had make it paid parking, because we're really hurting her business. Because in reality, the average person doesn't want to pay $5 to go sit in a restaurant and eat for 30 minutes or 45 minutes. So I would rather not hurt her business because she doesn't have other options for parking. I would like to at least the parking in front of her, on the block in front of her building, to allow her to still have the 90-minute, just like all the other downtown businesses that don't have parking.
Is that 4 spots?
I think it's 5 spots.
5 spots there.
Only on the south side of First Street?
Yes.
Or that whole First Street block?
Would you come up, please, to the podium? State your name and address for the record.
Hello, I'm Debbie Wright. I'm the owner of the Green Room Cafe. I've been there for 14 years. We've pretty much survived everything that went on downtown. But to have your own city take away the one bit of parking that you have, we have parking down South Orlando. You have parking, the 90-minute parking down Minuteman, but you took away the parking from South Orlando to Brevard. which is about 15 parking spaces, to be honest. Could be 16, but it's for sure 15. And it's very harmful. I've been there a very long time, and I've had customers, call me, customers as I visit their vendors, tell me, Deb, I love your sandwiches, but I'm not going to pay another $5, $10, or whatever to come down and eat at your restaurant. I just can't afford to do that. We're not in a position to afford to do that. And this is so pertinent because I am a small business owner. That's the cool thing about Cocoa Beach, is the small guy and the different vibe that we all bring and have been bringing for a very long time. You've not seen me down here. You've never had any problems with the green room. We've always employed properly. We've always had all the kids come work for us and all the things that are good for the city. We have a good vibe on a different corner. And so for me to stand in my business and have people call me on the telephone and look on a Saturday to all these empty parking places, they're empty. They were empty because nobody permitted to park there and nobody was going to pay to park there. And me sit there and watch my business go daily. I beg Keith to help me with this because I can't afford, with prices, everything going up and lack of help and all these things that are factoring in that all small businesses are fighting for. And we are America. This is Cocoa Beach. We are the small business owners. All the big guys can get covered someplace else. But I cannot be covered someplace else if you don't change your mind and just revert back to the 90-minute. I'm not asking for free parking like I did when I bought my building. There was no parking anywhere. I've had it for 14 years. But what I am asking, go back to 90 minutes and enforce that. We actually helped to enforce that when people would pull up with their kids and pull out the young kids come from Orlando and they got a whole mess of stuff that they're bringing over to the beach. We would point them to your parking lot. We would point them to a space that they could pay for their parking and ease that up. So bring the 90-minute back, please. Enforce it. We would help you enforce it. But if you don't do that, then you're going to see the green room go out of business because it's just like that. That's just the way it is nowadays. There's no place to squeeze us any longer. That's just the way it is.
Debbie, would you be willing, if we did make the places in front of your place the 90-minute again, would you be willing to, if you have any employees, to make sure that your employees get the parking pass?
Yeah, I mean, we can try and do all that. That's not the issue. What the issue is, my employees are parking elsewhere anyways, because there's not enough parking downtown, as we all know, anyways.
The reason why I ask is because, obviously we want to be fair to all the businesses, and like we've got other places like Jazzy's Mainly Lobster that, their employees had to get parking stickers and all that. Now, the reason why I'm not petitioning for them is because they have their own set alone parking, and you don't have anything, period.
Period.
So I think it's fair to you, just like the same thing with the Tiny Turtle and the Fat Donkey, to allow you to have parking for your business. In 90 minutes, I just think it's fair.
I can't do it immediately because I'm telling you, this parking has hurt me badly.
What I'm proposing and I'm asking is that we do something for her so that we don't have, she doesn't have to shut down.
Okay. I think I can make a motion that's enforceable as soon as Public Works can mobilize some folks. And that would be on the south side of First Street North between Orlando and Brevard Avenue to reconvert those spots back to 90-minute spots, which is changing the signage. They probably still got the old sign somewhere, hopefully, or they reused them, and paint over the numbers on the parking spots. It sounds pretty simple.
I second that if you guys would like to make that a motion.
Yeah, and I don't think we need it as a future agenda item. I don't think we need a resolution. I think we can just make that happen. Do you agree, City Manager?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
And it appears to be about 9 spaces.
And I think it's only about 5 on the south side.
No, it's on the
Looks
south
like-
side is probably
Whatever it is, the south side
It's about
from
8 or 9 because
Orlando
there's
to
the
Brevard.
split in the parking lot,
Well,
so
there's
there's
a
5 on
driveway
one
that
side.
goes into
Yes.
that other place.
Yeah, I'm not talking about the other side, I'm just talking about the south side from
South
Orlando
side.
to Brevard. That'll give her parking.
That's what my motion was, and
Yeah.
that's what you seconded.
Yes.
Any discussion? Public comment? Would you?
We're gonna support it, so if you.
Hello, Kelly Lenicky, owner of the Tiny Turtle. Thank you for Debbie for alerting me that this was even happening. Been very busy, but and I've walked by there all the time, and I thought, wow, this is really affecting her. So same thing with our business, the back spot on Brevard Avenue. Our employees have utilized that. I had 5 employees within the first day or two that got tickets. Thankfully, the city did work with us on those and void those out. And I did find out about the 8 parking passes, and I was meaning to find out, sometimes the turnover rate. So if I get one for somebody, they leave.
Just come in and see us.
Okay, I needed to find out about that. So, yeah, I'm all for that, but I've been watching that spot, and it's vacant all the time now. So even customers are not really utilizing that. So I know the City Hall area, that's blocked off now too. We've got 3 parking spots out front of our restaurant. So it has limited accessibility for our customers too. So just wanted to voice that out. I mean, obviously I'm all for getting spots because she doesn't have it. We have a little lot area that has some flooding issues. So our employees use that sometimes, but it's not ideal for them either. So taking out that parking area there on Brevard Avenue for us has been a change too. So just wanted to voice that out.
Thank you.
I mean, the intent was not, certainly, we love having local business, so we don't want to, that's not the intent. The intent was to sweep up the Orlando day trippers, right? So it sounds like it's working if no one's parking there. Now we just need to allow them to park there, the locals. So thank you. We love that green room.
All right, all in favor? Aye. Motion carries 5-0. Item E2.
Okay, in reference to the scheduling of commission meetings, A, acknowledge the scheduling of the August 22, 2023, 6 p.m. Commission special meeting for a report by the city's lobbying firm, Gray Robinson, and the discussion on the fiscal year 2024 budget. Representative Robin R. Hayes, City Manager, recommendation acknowledge and consider, no, just acknowledge.
Thank you. Yes.
We still have a meeting on the 17th, right?
17th is a regular meeting, 22nd is budget, and Mr. Williams asked that we bring the lobbyists in and give an update, so that's what we'll be doing.
Are we doing one at a time?
No, it's only one.
One item,
There's
right?
only one.
Okay, I'm sorry. Tired.
Budgeting was on there originally.
Right.
Sorry.
Move to
But-
approve.
Thank you.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Meeting adjourned.